gap between ocean science and societal applications. That's very important, this gap that you're helping to bridge, and that you've joined the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission, IOC of UNESCO, to support the development of the goose, as we say. I like to say the goose. That sounds good. We're going to continue. We're going to continue by inviting onto the stage to talk about Towards a Decade of Digital Ecosystem, Adam Leadbetter. And Adam Leadbetter, thank you for being with us. You participate in the Decade Coordination Office for Ocean Data Sharing, DCO-ODS. Under the UN Decade of Ocean Science. You are a member of IOC UNESCO, DCO Ocean Observing. Thank you for welcoming him to the stage with great enthusiasm. Mr. Leadbetter, thank you very much. Here is the microphone. And you have the floor.
Thank you. So, yeah, Emma gave a great introduction there. And what I wanted to do, though, was to just point out what the different challenges of the decade are. So I think sometimes those of us who work closely in the decade and who are very well connected to the decade, we kind of know what these things are. But then we forget that maybe not everybody else does. And so there are 10 challenges within the decade. And with the Decade Coordination Office for Ocean Observing, the Decade Collaborative Center for Ocean Prediction, and ourselves in the Decade Coordination Office for Ocean Data Sharing, we're focused on working on Challenge 8, which is looking at creating a digital representation of the ocean. And that digital representation of the ocean, the data that flows into that data ecosystem, should then feed into many of these other challenges. So as we look to share our data, as we look to coordinate our data, we need to think about how do we feed our data into those other challenges to create action and to take action on the data that we have. So in the process of the decade, there's this idea of Vision 2030. And the white paper on Challenge 8 on creating a digital representation of the ocean lists a number of actions that need to be taken, a list of targets around this digital representation of the ocean. So to increase ocean knowledge and risk mapping, to widen the use of ocean forecasting services, to improve the coverage and accessibility of ocean data across the world, to strengthen public-private collaboration. So we heard last night at an event that 26% of the world's oceans have been mapped. But there's an estimate that with the data that's locked away in private enterprise, if we could bring that in, we might get as far as 51% of the world's ocean mapped. And so we need to strengthen these collaborations between the public and private sector. And you can see that there's calls for more user-friendly applications for more stakeholders as well. So we talk about a value chain in ocean data, from observing to data management, data sharing, and onto analytics, modeling, and prediction. But in reality, there are a lot of value chains. So you can take this kind of overarching picture of a value chain of observing, management, analytics, and then action and background to describing new observing systems, changing how we observe the ocean. But that helps in all kinds of different ways, and you can map through different value chains on research and development, on policy, on planning, on strategy, on validation. And the Office for Economic Collaboration and Development have published really interesting papers on this and the value chains that support society through ocean data. But of course, there are challenges that Emma started to talk about when it comes to ocean data and to this kind of idea of a digital ecosystem. The ocean is undersampled. And again, we know that. We know that we're not observing the ocean as much as we might do. But then an associated problem is that once we have those observations, they're not always well shared. Partly because there's a lack of knowledge on the exact things that we're talking about here, on why you need to share data, but also there's a lack of knowledge on how to use it as well, and the impacts that it plays. Some of those value chains that we described using ocean data, not everybody knows about them, and so events like this are great for being able to raise that awareness. But some of that lack of knowledge is because ocean data isn't sufficiently used or well integrated. And then that blocks the use of forecasting services across the world. And so we're trying to extend forecasting services as well. If you were here just before, the Opera project is a great example of how those forecasting services are being pushed out into regions that didn't have them before. So really, I think there's two key takeaways that we want as we move forward to try and answer some of these difficulties. First is we need to maximize the local value of ocean data collection, whether it's observation or acquisition or modeling, by making those local data available to global systems. And then secondly, it's not just about having the technology, it's also about enabling people and getting people to understand what these systems are and helping them to get access to them through capacity development, through outreach. So we have a vision of a trusted, inclusive, and interconnected ocean data and information ecosystem. And to do that, we need to enable it through policy frameworks, through regulatory frameworks. And so we're pushing to try and get the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission data policy more widely accepted in different areas and different applications. We need to innovate. We need to add resourcing to this ecosystem, people and systems, and the development of those systems. And we need those partnerships, both between bodies like the Decade Collaborative Centres and the Decade Coordination Offices, and public and private partnerships as well. And to enable this vision, we need a data discovery and access service, and the Ocean Data Information System is being developed around that. The structures that we've heard about this afternoon around ocean forecasting are really vital and important as well. We're developing a digital atlas of the ocean as a way of helping people just to very quickly understand what data's out there and some of the challenges of the decade. And then we also need to do capacity development and training. So to get there, I'm not going to read through all of the things on this slide in the interest of time. But again, there's this idea of increasing demand. And then as we increase demand, we can get better data because people want to generate more data and there's more services generating data. Getting better data should help improve our observing and also our forecasting. And then as we integrate the data, we can transform that data into information. And then we can increase the demand further. And this goes both beyond kind of traditional ocean observing systems. Again, these public-private partnerships are absolutely vital to this. But also sharing data that hasn't always been shared. Socioeconomic data is really important as we get into marine spatial planning. Citizen science data can help in areas where the ocean is undersampled as well, and to help bring in those data. We need common global approaches. And I think we need to back those common systems by inspiring storytelling. We're not always the best people to tell the stories about these things ourselves. We need other people to tell those stories for us, and we need everybody's help in communicating them. We're also trying to lower the technical barriers to entry to these systems as well by providing some more simplified tools, but also doing capacity development. And then we need to share all of these frameworks across value chains so that they are of use to many people. So we've made some progress. We're halfway through the decade, and we've had to show some progress so far. We're by no means at the end of our journey yet. We need to keep going, and we need to do more than we're already doing. But there's some really interesting initiatives with ocean observers, the corporate sector, and also the blue tech sector. So this Possibility Ocean conference happened in America, in the US, and got all of these sectors together to start talking about how to feed more observations into the global data ecosystem. We have, from the Decade Collaborative Center for Ocean Prediction, then we have some best practices in forecasting, some operational readiness levels, how to test whether your systems are ready and what level they're at, but also architectures so that you can take those architectures and put them into place wherever you are. And it's good practice and we're developing that around other areas of the digital ecosystem as well. And then the corporate data group of the decade have already published bathymetric data sharing guidelines, and there is a marine mammal observing data sharing guideline to come very soon as well from the same group. So all of these guidelines, all of these systems and architectures, as they harmonize together, they help us build this global ecosystem. Some of our next steps are to continue co-developing standards around data sharing for ocean forecasting, for citizen science, for socioeconomic data. We need to promote good practices around planning to get your data into these kind of global systems, and also how once your data are in these systems, how you get the attribution and the credit for putting the data into those systems. We also need to develop some flagship products for each of the decade challenges so that we can show the progress that's been made across the decade and put those into our global atlas concept. And one of the other things, I'm going to read all of the things that we have on there, but one of the other approaches that we're taking here is about getting communities together who face similar problems. And by addressing those problems together, making more impact than if we did it alone. So I think, again, in the event last night, we heard going far together. And I think that's really what we're trying to do across this collaboration that's being talked about, and as we build this decade digital ecosystem. By doing it together, we can go much further than we could do if we did it alone. And that leads me to my last slide, which is just to say, we want your help. We need your help in doing this. And so if you have data that you want to share into the decade digital ecosystem, if you want to help us set the standards that we're talking about, if you want to just contribute in any way, then we have this document's available from the Decade website. You can scan the QR code right now and get access to it, or you can find the document online. But we'd love to hear from you. We want to go far together with everybody who's in this room or listening online. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Leadbetter. Thank you for the clarity of your presentation, your call for action at the end, and for all of your work. Thank you. Let's bring you back down here. Thank you so much.